The first doctor froze when the patient's boots began to smoke. Not steam from rainwater. Smoke. A thin white thread curled from the wet leather and drifted beneath the emergency room lights, while two paramedics pushed the gurney through the doors. "Werhode explosion," one shouted. 7 more behind us. Dr. Malcolm Reed reached for the patient's jacket. The new nurse caught his wrist. "Don't touch him." Every face in Trauma 1 turned toward Nora Vale. She had worked at St. Catherine's Regional for 11 days. She was 38, quiet, and so new that another nurse's name was still scratched into her lockered door. Reed had spent the morning sending her to update medication lists, because she entered orders too slowly, and asked questions he considered obvious. Now her fingers were locked around the attending physician's wrist. "Let go," Reed said. Nora released him, but she did not move aside. The unconscious man on the gurney wore a National Guard uniform beneath a soaked turnout jacket. His pupils were pinpoints. Saliva shone at the corner of his mouth. His forearms jerked in small, repeating spasms. The paramedic nearest him coughed, then coughed again. Nora looked at the damp sleeves, the smoking boots, and the ceiling vents directly above the bay. Her voice changed. "Seal red zone. Reverse the airflow. Nobody crosses the black line." The command cracked through the department with such force that 3 doctors stopped where they stood. Nora pointed before anyone could question her. "Trauma doors closed. Ventilation off to this wing. Exposed equipment stays where it is. Chemical protection before contact. Decontamination outside, upwind from the entrance. Move." Charge nurse Dana Cho stared at her, not confused. Recognizing something, Reed found his voice first. "You do not establish a red zone in my department." The coughing paramedic collapsed. That ended the argument. Nora reached him without touching his clothing. She slid a disposable barrier beneath his head and spoke to the respiratory therapist. "Supplied air mask, not standard oxygen. If this is what I think it is, your skin is an entrance wound." Dana hit the internal disaster alarm. Red lights began flashing above the doors. Within 40 seconds, St. Catherine's changed shape. Patients were pulled from adjacent rooms. Security sealed the corridor. Maintenance cut the air handling to Trauma 1. Staff removed watches, pens, and exposed gowns into red bags, while the decontamination team opened the exterior lane. Through it all, Nora gave short instructions, 1 time each. People followed, because every instruction arrived seconds before the danger that proved it necessary. Reed stood beside the nurse's station, watching the new employee he had assigned to paperwork reorganize his emergency room. At 10:17 a.m., the first 8 casualties from Riverbend Agricultural Supply reached St. Catherine's. At 10:21, the hospital learned there were 26 more. The warehouse sat 4 miles away. A delivery truck had crashed through a loading wall during a public safety demonstration attended by firefighters, junior cadets, National Guard reservists, and local families. Witnesses described a flash, a low-moving cloud, and people dropping without burns. The fire department had called it smoke inhalation. Nora knew smoke did not make leather react like that. Dana stepped into the decontamination lane beside her, already wearing a protective suit. "How do you know this?" Nora checked the seal on Dana's mask. Later, that was not an accusation. "I know." The first patient's wallet identified him as Lieutenant Aaron Bell, National Guard logistics officer. Beneath his shirt, Nora found a metal tag engraved with a unit number, 72nd Medical Support Battalion. Her hand paused. Dana saw it. "You know the unit?" Nora covered the tag. "I know the symptoms." Toxicology confirmed likely organophosphate exposure. Antidote kits arrived while decontamination staff washed residue from skin and hair. Bell's heart rate began to recover. The paramedic opened his eyes. Then the ambulance radio transmitted a warning. St. Catherine's, 3 civilian vehicles self-transporting. Unknown number of victims. They bypassed the field decon site and are approaching your public entrance. Nora looked at the hospital map. The public entrance sat beneath the main air intake. Security stops them in the east lot. Reed stepped beside her. I will manage the hospital, then manage it. His eyes narrowed. Nora pointed at the map. One contaminated family enters that lobby, and you may have to close every floor above us. The radio crackled. The first vehicle had already crossed the gate. Reed hesitated. Only a second. It was long enough for everyone to see. Nora took the portable radio. East entrance. This is clinical command. Close the automatic doors. Keep the families inside their vehicles. Approach from upwind. Tell them help is coming, and do not let anyone break a window. Reed looked at her. Clinical command? You can correct my title when the air is safe. Dana turned away to hide the beginning of a smile. Security stopped the cars 30 yards from the entrance. Fire crews reached them in protective gear. The lobby remained clean. For the next 20 minutes, the parking structure became a field hospital. Green-tag patients sat beneath blue tarps. Yellow-tag patients moved through decontamination in groups. Red-tagged patients entered by one isolated corridor. Nora placed colored tape on the floor so clean and contaminated roots never crossed. She assigned one nurse to record times by hand because electronic charting had become too slow. She told every team to explain actions before touching frightened patients. Panic spreads through missing information, she said. Give people the map. Reed heard her. A few minutes later, he repeated the sentence to a resident. The 7th casualty was a 17-year-old junior fire cadet named Emily Harper. She arrived walking, coughing, and, insisting she was fine, Nora noticed her left hand. The fingers opened and closed without rhythm. Were you inside the warehouse? Nora asked. Near the loading dock. Did you touch anyone who collapsed? My dad. Emily looked over Nora's shoulder toward the incoming line. He's a fire captain. He went back for 2 kids. Name? Daniel Harper. Nora marked Emily red. A resident objected. She is walking and speaking. She is also developing muscle fasciculations. We have unconscious patients ahead of her. No. The resident looked at Reed. Reed studied Emily's hand. Red, he said. It was the first time he supported Nora without argument. Emily's breathing slowed during decontamination. Nora treated her early enough to avoid intubation. Even while trembling, Emily kept asking how many patients had arrived and whether a white fire helmet had come through. Her father had not. I should have stayed with him, she said. You were exposed. He told me to run, and you followed the order that kept you alive. Emily looked at Nora sharply. As though the words carried a second meaning, Nora looked away first. At 10:43, Brigadier General Samuel Cross entered from the east lot, wearing a protective mask around his neck. His sleeve was wet. One cheek had turned red. 2 soldiers tried to keep him on a wheelchair he clearly did not want. He heard Nora through the radio. Red patients through lane 1. Keep families paired when possible. Nobody crosses black tape. Cross stopped. He turned toward the glass. Vale? Nora's shoulders became rigid. The general took one step toward her. I know that voice. You need decontamination, sir. Captain. Sit down. Cross sat. Every doctor in the corridor froze, not because Nora had shouted. Because a brigadier general had obeyed the hospital's newest nurse, without hesitation. Cross looked around the department, then back at Nora. You still make a room move before it understands why. General. The warning in her voice stopped him. He allowed the decontamination team to take him away. Reed waited until the doors closed. "Captain, not here." "What were you?" Nora checked Emily's monitor instead of answering. "Busy." The mystery remained, and the department kept moving. At 10:51, Daniel Harper arrived. Emily recognized his white helmet before she saw his face. He was unconscious, soot-blackened, and breathing through an airway placed in the field. His blood pressure was low, but he had no major burns. A firefighter reported that Daniel had carried 2 children out of the battery room before collapsing near the loading dock. Emily tried to leave her bed. Nora stopped her gently. "He made it here. Is he dying? We are working on the next part." "That is not an answer. It is the truest one I have." Emily gripped the blanket. Nora added, "I will tell you when the next part changes." Specific truth settled Emily more than reassurance would have. Daniel initially responded to organophosphate treatment. His heart rate improved. His secretions decreased. Reed prepared to transfer him into the yellow zone. Nora agreed. While Daniel was being stabilized, Emily kept one hand curled around her blanket. Nora noticed a marker line across her wrist. "What is that?" Emily glanced down. "Dad drew it before the demonstration. We were practicing triage. He said the line was where my glove should end." The ink had nearly washed away during decontamination. "He embarrasses me," Emily said. "Checks every buckle twice. Makes me repeat exits before we enter a building. He gives you a map." Emily looked at Nora. "You say that a lot." "My brother hated people saying, 'Everything will be fine.' He said it was what they offered when they had no useful information." "Was he a medic too?" Nora watched Daniel's monitor through the glass. "Yes." "Did he teach you command voice?" Nora smiled. "No. He said I was born ordering people around." Emily smiled back, then looked toward her father. "When he wakes up, tell him I followed procedure." "You can tell him. You don't know that." "No," Nora said. "But his pressure is improving. His heart is responding. And he is surrounded by people who know what changed. That is the map we have." Emily breathed more slowly. For the first time since arriving, she released the blanket. That was her mistake. 9 minutes later, Daniel's blood pressure collapsed. The monitor alarm pulled Nora across the corridor. His skin had turned an unnatural shade of red beneath the soot. The oxygen monitor showed an acceptable number, but his body was failing as though no oxygen reached the cells. "Second exposure," Nora said. Reed looked at the field report. "Battery room. Cyanide from combustion." Toxicology confirmed the pattern. Nora felt the failure land inside her. She had focused on the pesticide because it was the danger she recognized first. Daniel had carried both poisons into the department, and she had let one improving number convince her the story was finished. The hospital had 4 cyanide antidote kits. 5 patients now met treatment criteria. One was Daniel Harper. Another was General Cross. The others were a firefighter, a warehouse electrician, and a 62-year-old maintenance worker named Luis Ortega. Reed read the inventory twice. 2 additional kits are 12 minutes away. Daniel's monitor slowed. Emily watched through the plastic wall. "Treat my dad," she said. No one answered. Reed turned to Nora. "You know field triage. Make the call." The trust in his voice hurt more than his earlier contempt. Nora studied the 5 patients. Cross was conscious and compensating. The electrician had the strongest blood pressure. Daniel and the firefighter were crashing. Luis's rhythm had become unstable. "Fresh kits to Harper, the firefighter, Ortega, and the electrician," Nora said. "Cross waits for transport stock." A hospital administrator who had just arrived stared at her. "You are delaying treatment for the general?" Cross heard through the curtain. She is treating the people most likely to die first, he said. Do not waste her time. Nora administered Daniel's dose herself. For 30 seconds, nothing changed. Emily pressed both hands to the transparent wall. Come on, Dad. Daniel's rhythm deteriorated. Nora began resuscitation with Reed beside her. She gave the next instruction, then another, and heard none of the room beyond Emily's voice repeating the same two words. Come on, come on, come on. Daniel's heart stopped for 18 seconds. They brought him back. His pressure rose slowly. Emily folded against the wall and cried without sound. Nora stepped out of the bay. Her gloves were wet with sweat inside the protective suit. Reed followed. You caught the second exposure. I cleared him too early. You corrected it. After his heart stopped. He is alive. Nora looked at him. That sentence becomes dangerous when we use it to erase what almost happened. Reed absorbed the rebuke. Then he nodded. What should I say? Nothing yet. So he stood beside her silently, while Emily watched her father breathe. The additional antidote kits arrived. Cross received treatment before his condition became critical. Luis stabilized. By 11:42, the casualty board showed 34 arrivals, 9 critical patients, and no deaths. The department began to exhale. Then Emily asked Nora a question. Where is Cadet Van 3? Nora looked at her. What? The junior team came in 2 vans. Mine reached the field decon station. Van 3 took the younger cadets to the south gate when the cloud moved. Dana checked the transport list. No Van 3. The incident commander believed every civilian vehicle had been accounted for. Emily shook her head. There were 8 kids in that van and Coach Mason. Nora's stomach tightened. GPS located the vehicle beneath the old rail underpass 2 miles from the warehouse. Stormwater had risen around the wheels. The engine was off. No one answered the driver's phone. Fire rescue estimated 12 minutes to reach it. Nora looked through the glass at Emily Harper. He had not regained consciousness. Emily saw the decision forming on her face. Go, she said. Nora turned. I am not leaving. The van needs someone who knows what this is. The rescue captain has my radio. Emily's eyes hardened. Then make him understand. The words sounded like an order. Nora almost smiled. Dana handed her a second radio. Command from here. For a moment, Nora heard rotor blades, canvas snapping, and a younger man calling her name through a mask. Her brother, Eli, had died 19 years earlier after a chemical attack on a forward medical station outside Kabul. Nora had commanded the station. When evacuation failed, she tried to be medic, commander, sister, and casualty officer at the same time. She saved dozens. She remembered only the person she could not. Afterward, she left the army and avoided every job that put a command board in front of her. She had become a hospital nurse because she wanted one patient at a time and walls that did not shake. Now 9 children sat inside a contaminated van, and Nora's first instinct was to run toward them herself. Dana read it. You do not have to carry every door you open. Nora looked at the radio. Command was not the same as proximity. That was the lesson she had refused for 19 years. She keyed the microphone. Rescue 1. Listen carefully. Approach from the north. The underpass traps heavier vapors, so do not descend without supplied air. Do not open both doors. Establish one clean exit and pull from the highest side first. The fire captain acknowledged. Emily sat upright on her bed. Coach Mason keeps a seat chart clipped above the windshield. Nora relayed it. Smallest cadets sit in the back, Emily added. One has asthma. Tyler Grant. Red backpack. Nora relayed that too. The rescue team reached the van in 7 minutes. The driver was unconscious. Several windows had fogged from the inside. One cadet had used emergency towels to cover the vents. Another had placed the asthma inhaler into Tyler's hand, but did not know how often he had used it. Nora guided the rescue captain through the order of removal, while Emily supplied names, ages, and seating positions. "Back row first," Nora said. "Keep the siblings together. Tyler directly to airway support. Coach Mason comes out last only if he is still breathing." A voice broke through the radio. "Captain, we have movement from the driver." Reed glanced at Nora at the word captain. She did not correct it. The first child emerged coughing but conscious. Then the second, Tyler, came out blue around the lips. The field medic began treatment while Nora watched his oxygen reading transmitted to the hospital. Emily whispered every name as the cadets were removed. 7, 8. Coach Mason remained inside. The fire captain's voice tightened. "He is pinned by the steering column. Water is rising." Nora studied the underpass diagram. "Do not cut the column until you isolate the battery." The crash damaged the front compartment. One spark inside concentrated vapor can take the van. Reed leaned over the map. Hydraulic spreader from the passenger side. Less electrical equipment. Nora looked at him. He was no longer waiting to be told what to see. She relayed the plan. The team freed Mason with 40 seconds before water reached the floorboards. He had a pulse when they carried him uphill. Only then did Emily allow herself to lie back. "You knew all of them," Nora said. "I was team lead. You gave useful information under pressure. I was scared. That does not cancel the first thing." Emily looked through the glass at her father. "Did you used to do this?" Nora considered the easy answer. "Yes." "What happened?" "I stopped believing I should." Emily frowned. "That is not the same as not being able to." Nora had no reply. By early afternoon, the crisis became controlled work. Patients moved to intensive care. Families received updates. Environmental teams confirmed the hospital remained clean. Daniel Harper opened his eyes at 2:18 and asked for Emily before he asked where he was. Nora brought her to the doorway. Daniel could not speak around the tube, but his hand lifted. Emily placed her palm against the glass opposite his. Nora stepped away and let the moment belong to them. At 4:40, she removed her protective suit. Her scrubs beneath were soaked through. She entered the staff room expecting another assignment. Conversation stopped. Dana pointed to a chair. "Sit, I need to check Daniel Harper. Reed is checking him." That concerned Nora enough that she sat. Reed stood near the coffee machine. "I owe you an apology." Nora waited. "I treated experience as something your badge should announce. When it did not, I assumed you had none. You assigned me discharge paperwork because I was slow. You were slow. I had never used the civilian charting system." A few people laughed softly. Nora almost did. Reed continued. "You protected the building, recognized 2 exposures, coordinated 34 casualties, and stopped me from making several mistakes. We did that." "Yes. But you made we possible." No cheering followed. No applause. Just exhausted people meeting her eyes. That felt honest enough to accept. General Cross entered wearing a hospital robe and pushing his own IV pole despite a nurse objecting behind him. Nora stood automatically. "Back to bed. In a minute." He placed a worn brass coin on the table. "Forward Medical Company 9. The emblem had been rubbed smooth at the edges. Nora did not touch it. Cross looked at the staff. "You've been wondering who she was." Nora's eyes sharpened. "General." He looked back at her. "Then I will tell only the part she needs to hear." The room stayed quiet. Nora commanded a forward treatment station outside Kabul. During a chemical attack, she had 2 antidote injectors and 3 soldiers who needed them. One was me. One was a radio specialist. The third was her younger brother, Eli. Nora's fingers curled against the chair, Cross continued. She gave the medicine to the two people whose exposure was still reversible. Eli's was not. I chose, Nora said. Yes. He died looking at me. Yes. Her voice became smaller. He understood. He trusted you. The distinction entered the room gently and refused to leave. Cross slid the coin closer. Ellie gave me this the week before the attack. He said if everything went wrong, his sister would still see the next right thing. I hated your decision for 12 minutes. Then I lived long enough to understand it. Nora touched the brass. For 19 years, she had remembered Eli's final expression as forgiveness. Forgiveness implied guilt. It had kept her kneeling beside his death long after everyone else left the tent. Trust was different. Trust meant he had known who she was before the choice broke her. Nora closed her hand around the coin. Her fingers began to shake. She did not hide them. Dana placed a cup of water nearby. No one told Nora to be strong. They let her be tired. The investigation found no mastermind and no deliberate attack. A manager had replaced water in a demonstration tank with pesticide concentrate to avoid reporting missing inventory. A damaged charger ignited fumes in the battery room. Safety valves had not been inspected. Emergency exits were blocked by stored pallets. The ordinary nature of the disaster disturbed Nora more than conspiracy would have. Catastrophe had required no villain who imagined himself evil. Only several people deciding consequences belonged to someone else. Hence, Catherine's changed its emergency procedures. Ventilation controls moved to the charge desk. Chemical response drills became mandatory. Reed remained director, but he stopped treating questions as challenges to his authority. When a new employee noticed something strange, he listened before explaining why it was probably nothing. Nora became the hospital's disaster preparedness nurse. She refused the title of commander. Instead, she trained teams to share command. Whenever someone looked to her for the answer, she asked, "What do you see?" At first, they hated the question. Later, they understood. 11 months after Riverbend, Nora finished an afternoon shift and found Emily waiting near the ambulance entrance. Her hair was shorter. A college emergency medical services jacket had replaced the cadet shirt. Daniel Harper stood beside her, thinner but upright, one hand resting on a cane. Behind them, the rescued cadets arranged portable barriers beneath a red training canopy. Tyler Grant carried an inhaler clipped properly to his vest. Coach Mason supervised from a folding chair. Emily smiled. "We wanted to show you something." Colored tape marked clean and contaminated zones. A practice mannequin lay beside a mock spill. Younger volunteers waited for direction. "You organized this?" Nora asked. The county started a youth response team. Emily pointed to a patch on her jacket. "Next right thing." Nora looked away before the emotion reached her face. Daniel noticed anyway. "She has talked about you for 11 months, he said. Emily groaned. "Dad, it is true." Rain began tapping against the canopy. The practice alarm sounded. Everyone looked at Nora. For one dangerous second, command rose automatically into her throat. "Seal the lane. Move the wind marker. Separate the teams." She swallowed it. Then she looked at Emily. "What do you see?" Emily studied the flags, the doors, the colored paths, and the volunteers waiting for instruction. "The wind shifted," she said. "Our clean corridor is wrong." She moved the team before Nora could answer. Daniel opened a red umbrella and held it over Nora when she stepped beyond the canopy. "You could have corrected her faster," he said. She saw it. "Because you taught her." "No. Because someone finally asked her to look." Across the pavement, Emily reorganized the drill. The younger cadets followed. Tyler caught a crossing error and redirected 2 volunteers. Coach Mason smiled from his chair. Nora held Eli's brass coin inside her coat pocket, warm from her hand. The memory of Kabul remained. It always would, but it no longer ended only with a monitor falling silent. It also held Emily's fingers opening and closing before anyone else noticed. Daniel Harper's heart, returning after 18 empty seconds. A van door opening beneath a flooded underpass. Reed leaning over a map and seeing the next danger without being ordered to see it. A room full of doctors freezing when a quiet new nurse gave a battlefield command, and then moving, not because they knew who she had been, because they trusted what she could see. Emily completed the drill and turned toward Nora for approval. Nora lifted one eyebrow. Emily laughed, faced her team, and began the debrief herself. The rain softened around the red umbrella. Nora listened as everyone spoke.